Hi, we're reading the story. It's afternoon again. We're starting to do this in the afternoon instead of the morning. Let's see, we're on page 53, and the Lord had just told the Israelites to go encamp by the sea so that the Egyptians would think that the Israelites were confused and that they would pursue them. And the Lord said that he would do this for his glory and so that the Egyptians would know, not just the Israelites, but so the Egyptians would know that he was the Lord. So that's where we are, middle of the page. When the king of Egypt, meaning Pharaoh, was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his officials changed their minds about them and said, "What have we done? We have let the Israelites go and have lost their services." So he had his chariot made ready and took his army with him. He took 600 of the best chariots. That's a lot of chariots. Along with all the other chariots of Egypt, with officers over all of them. The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, so that he pursued the Israelites, who were marching out boldly. The Egyptians, meaning all Pharaoh's horses and chariots, horsemen and troops, pursued the Israelites and overtook them as they camped by the sea near Pi Hahiroth, opposite of Baal Zephon. I don't know. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die?"
That's funny.
It's a little funny and a little hateful. "What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, 'Leave us alone, leave us to serve the Egyptians'?" They were comfortable in their slavery. Even though, didn't they cry out? Now that, well, they were romanticizing it, I guess. That's better, yeah. They were romanticizing about how it was, because they did cry out. They had said, "Oh Lord, it's so bad, we're in," and it was bad, but now that they're gone from it, now they're romantic, like, "Oh, I don't think it was that bad." "It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert." And Moses answered the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today." That's a good promise. Today is always a good day. For God's promises to come to fruition. "The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on." So apparently Moses said that to the people, and then he did what to the Lord?
Cried out to him.
So I think Moses was a little afraid. "Tell the Israelites to move on." Listening. "Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground." You have to imagine how scary that is for Moses. Because what did he have to do?
Stretch his hand out.
He had to raise his staff and stretch out your hand. That's two hands up. One with the staff, one with the hand up.
Why would that be scary?
Because what if nothing happened? This is by faith. You're like, all right, here we go.
If nothing happened, the dude would be like,
He said, "I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them. And I will gain the glory through Pharaoh and all his army, through his chariots and his horsemen. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I gain glory through Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen." Then the angel of God, who had been traveling in front of Israel's army, withdrew and went behind them. The pillar of cloud also moved in front and stood behind them, coming between the armies of Egypt and Israel. So now there's a big cloud between Egypt and Israel, and the angels back there too. Throughout the night, the angel of God, that is, the cloud brought darkness to one side and light to the other side. Oh, I don't remember reading that before. So neither went near the other all night long. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. Here's his big moment. And all that night the Lord drove back the sea. So it took all night. Yeah, I'm wondering if Moses had to have his hand up all night.
I think I mentioned a little earlier how it was amazing that Moses had to, like in one of our says that Moses had to keep his hand up all night because that means he had to keep his hand up for 12 hours and not go to sleep.
I don't know if it says that or not. It says he stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land.
Maybe he had a dream that he was doing it, and he was actually doing it in real life in his sleep.
Could be.
That'd be so cool.
Put that down, please. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground. That's pretty amazing that it was dry. With a wall of water on their right and on their left. The Egyptians, the Lord was thinking about them. He didn't just make a way, he also made a way that was dry so that they wouldn't get stuck in the mud. And now the Egyptians pursued them, and all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. During the last watch of the night, the Lord looked down from the pillar of the fire and cloud at the Egyptian army and threw it into confusion. He jammed the wheels of the chariots, so they had difficulty driving. And the Egyptians said, "Let's get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." So the Egyptians realized that the Lord, the true God, was against them. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen." Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak, the sea went back to its place. The Egyptians were fleeing forward, so maybe he did have to keep his hand up. I don't know. It doesn't specifically say. The Egyptians were fleeing toward it, and the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and the horsemen. The entire army of Pharaoh had followed the Israelites into the sea, and not one of them survived. But the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. That was probably pretty scary.
You're like imagine a shark poked his head out.
And an octopus after that.
This unforgettable escape impressed upon the Israelites that God was indeed taking care of them. Enemy horses and chariot drivers were thrown into the sea. The people celebrated and sang for joy.
The horses had nothing to do about it.
Yes, I know. That is sad. Okay, we're going to stop there. We're on page 55. Hopefully we'll get another one of these tomorrow.